We've seen vehicles weaponized over 100 times against our law enforcement officers. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, January 2026. She was talking about Renee Good, 37 years old, mother, Minneapolis resident, shot and killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross on January 7th. Secretary Noem called it an act of domestic terrorism, but here's what the video shows. Good's car was surrounded by multiple masked federal agents, no uniforms, no marked vehicles. One agent stepped directly in front of her SUV. Good backed up, turned her wheel, started moving forward, and Jonathan Ross fired multiple shots. The Hennepin County medical examiner ruled it a homicide. 17 days later, Alex Pretty was shot dead in the street, 37 years old, ICU nurse, Minneapolis resident. Federal authorities said self-defense, said Pretty was armed and threatening, but multiple videos show something different. Show Pretty unarmed, being subdued, on the ground when he was shot. 2 American citizens, dead within 3 weeks. Both killed by federal agents during Operation Metro Surge, the largest immigration enforcement operation in American history. And here's what should terrify you. The Department of Justice announced they will not investigate either shooting for constitutional violations. 0 federal accountability. 0 state access to evidence. 0 answers. This is the story of what happens when federal power operates without oversight, and why Minneapolis has become ground zero in a constitutional crisis that every American should be watching. Let me take you back to December 2025. The Trump administration announces Operation Metro Surge, targeting Minneapolis and St. Paul. The stated goal? Arrest dangerous criminals with deportation orders. December 4th, ICE reports 12 arrests, all Somali and Latino individuals. Claims all have criminal backgrounds. December 9th and 10th, 2 U.S. citizens are detained, later released. By December 13th, DHS reports 400 arrests. Claims this includes pedophiles, rapists, kidnappers, and violent thugs. Strong language. Scary language. But here's what the data actually shows. In January, ICE reported that 103 out of 2,000 arrestees had records of violent crimes. That's 5%. 5% with violent criminal records, which means 95% did not. 1/3 of people arrested had no criminal record at all. January 6, 2026. DHS announces what it calls the largest immigration enforcement operation ever carried out. 2,000 agents deployed to the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, not just ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security investigations, multiple DHS units. The force is roughly 5 times the size of the Minneapolis Police Department, 5 times larger than the city's own police force, operating on city streets, in residential neighborhoods, without local oversight. St. Paul City Council member Molly Coleman described the first day as unlike any other day we've experienced. An eyewitness later said, "People in our neighborhood have been terrorized by ICE for 6 weeks." And then came January 7th. Portland Avenue, between East 33rd and 34th Streets, central neighborhood of Minneapolis, a few blocks from Renee Good's home, January 7th, 2026. Early morning. ICE agents conducting operations in the area, multiple unmarked vehicles. Agents in tactical gear, but no clear identification. Good was behind the wheel of her vehicle. What happened next depends on who you ask. According to DHS and Secretary Noem, Good deliberately tried to run over federal agents. An act of domestic terrorism. The agent fired in self-defense. According to video evidence that later emerged, something different. Good's car was approached by multiple ICE officers. At least one stepped directly in front of her vehicle. Good backed up, turned her wheel, began to drive forward, and ICE agent Jonathan Ross opened fire. Multiple shots. Good was killed. Ross is not some rookie agent. Court documents show he joined ICE in 2016. He's a firearms instructor, active shooter instructor, field intelligence officer. Member of the St. Paul Special Response Team, the SWAT team, 8 years of experience, specialized training, and he stepped in front of a vehicle, then shot the driver. The Hennepin County medical examiner ruled Good's death a homicide. But here's where it gets worse. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice announced they would not investigate this shooting, would not examine whether constitutional violations occurred. That's not normal. The Civil Rights Division typically takes the lead in cases like this. Cases involving federal agents killing civilians. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said publicly that deadly force can sometimes be justified. That's the official position. Case closed. On January 13th, 12 federal prosecutors resigned, some from Minneapolis, some from Washington, including former acting U.S. Attorney Joseph H. Thompson. They resigned over the Department of Justice's actions, or lack of actions. On January 8th, the FBI revoked the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's access to evidence. The two agencies had agreed to conduct a joint investigation. The FBI broke that agreement. Minnesota's Public Safety Commissioner said it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for local investigation to continue without federal cooperation. Minneapolis's chief county prosecutor said her office was exploring all options to ensure a state-level investigation can continue. But the federal government controls the evidence, and they're not sharing. 17 days after Renee Good was killed, it happened again. January 24, 2026. Eat Street neighborhood, South Minneapolis. Tens of thousands of Minnesotans had marched through the streets the day before, in sub-zero temperatures, demanding ICE stop what they called the terrorizing of their communities. The next day, federal agents shot and killed Alex Jeffrey Pretty, 37 years old, ICU nurse, Minneapolis resident. Federal authorities described it as self-defense, said Pretty was armed and threatening agents, but video from an on-the-ground reporter shows something different. Multiple shots fired. Agents believed to be standing over Pretty when he was struck, apparently in his chest. Other videos show Pretty unarmed, being subdued by agents, already on the ground when he was shot. The ACLU of Minnesota said agents brutally beat him in front of witnesses before shooting him. DHS said the agent fired because he was fearing for his own life, the same narrative, almost word for word, as they used for Renee Good. After Pretty's death, Noreen Shah of the ACLU said, "After the horrific shooting of Renee Good, the Trump administration recklessly escalated and deployed even more heavily armed agents into Minneapolis, and today we are again seeing the devastating and predictable consequences." Bruce Springsteen dedicated his song The Promised Land to Renee Good at a concert in New Jersey. He told his audience, "If you believe in the power of law and that no one stands above it, if you stand against heavily armed masked federal troops invading an American city, using Gestapo tactics against our fellow citizens, if you believe you don't deserve to be murdered for exercising your American right to protest, then send a message to this president. ICE should get the fuck out of Minneapolis." On January 28th, Springsteen released a new song, Streets of Minneapolis. His response to Operation Metro Surge and the deaths of Alex Pretty and Renee Good. Other artists spoke out. Billie Eilish, Dave Matthews, Neil Young, all publicly condemned immigration and customs enforcement following these shootings. Here's what's happening in Minneapolis right now. Over 280 wrongful detention lawsuits filed in federal court, just in January. Compare that to 128 filed in all of 2025 and 375 filed between 2016 and 2024 combined. Politico reported that Minneapolis U.S. District Court judges have consistently ruled that the Trump administration violated the law, sometimes egregiously. On January 27th, Chief Judge Patrick Schiltz ordered ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons to appear in court. The agency had failed to follow dozens of court orders in wrongful detention cases. Judge Schiltz threatened to hold Lyons in contempt of court. The Trump administration is arguing for absolute immunity for ICE officers. Not qualified immunity, absolute immunity. What's the difference? Qualified immunity protects agents unless they knowingly violate clearly established laws. But plaintiffs can still pursue lawsuits. Evidence can be discovered. Absolute immunity means lawsuits get dismissed. No investigation, no discovery phase, no accountability. 60% of Americans believe ICE uses excessive force. That's according to recent polling. 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025. Since September 2025, there have been at least 17 incidents where federal immigration agents opened fire on civilians. 17 incidents. In 5 states and Washington, D.C. The Wall Street Journal found 13 incidents since July where immigration agents fired at or into civilian vehicles. And when video evidence contradicts official accounts, the federal government controls the evidence and refuses to share it with state authorities. That's not law enforcement. That's a breakdown of constitutional order. 2 American citizens, Renee Good, 37, mother Alex Pretty, 37, ICU nurse, both shot and killed by federal agents within 3 weeks, both in Minneapolis, both during Operation Metro Surge. In both cases, video evidence appears to contradict the official narrative of self-defense. In both cases, the Department of Justice refused to investigate for constitutional violations. In both cases, the federal government blocked state authorities from accessing evidence. 0 federal accountability, 0 independent investigation, 0 transparency. The question isn't just what happened on Portland Avenue or Eat Street. The question is, what happens when federal agents can kill American citizens on American streets with no oversight, no investigation, and no consequences? Because what's happening in Minneapolis isn't staying in Minneapolis. This is part 1. In part 2, we're going to show you exactly how Operation Metro Surge works, the tactics, the scale, and why federal officials compared it to a military operation in Venezuela. If you think this matters, share this video, because the only way this gets investigated is if enough people demand it.